On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very special treat. He is the co-founder of billion-dollar brand Quest Nutrition and the co-founder and host of the Dynamic and Exciting Impact Theory, just to name a few. He is the definition of a super entrepreneur, and his interview style and conversation quality is the best on the planet, bar none. He is the master of helping you unlock your potential, and he will unplug you from the matrix and empower you to think and play bigger. He's just a juggernaut in all facets of life and a terrific husband and human. Please welcome the unique, multifaceted, brilliant, and handsome, abundant Tom Bilyeu. How you doing, Tom?
I'm good, man. Way too kind, but I am good. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. I did good by you with the intro.
That was great. Again, way too generous, but here we are, and I'm very honored. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you. I'm so excited for the audience. We're about 4 million out. In case you're living under a rock and you're not familiar with Tom, my best suggestion, do a deep dive. Watch all his interviews, listen to his podcast, all his content, play catch up. What I think's most valuable today is we just have an unbelievable conversation. Before we dive in, we're going to get a little weird. You ready for me?
I'm ready.
What is your superpower, Tom?
I understand myself even when I'm petty and insecure.
Wow. But one thing that came to mind right there is like emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And awareness.
I would agree very much so. And that has given me virtually every gift I have in my life.
So beautifully articulated. And also, like, you don't have to approve of everything, but you have to accept it so that you can begin to change it, right?
For sure. And I definitely don't approve of everything. But when I finally learned to actually understand what was driving me, not what I wanted to be driving me, or even what I thought was driving me, but what's actually driving me, then I could begin to figure out, okay, why is that driving me? What can I do about it? And by changing those underlying foundations, then everything else changed. Because ultimately, all that really matters are your actions, but your actions are driven off of beliefs, values. And if you don't understand that, or you make the mistake that most people make, which is thinking, well, my beliefs are my beliefs because it's just objectively true. That's the mistake that most people make, because it's not. We all live life looking through a funhouse mirror, and you have to understand your distortions. You have to be able to get rid of the ones that aren't serving you. You have to be able to create some that might be useful. And so I learned that in my early 20s. And after that, everything changed.
I'm just smiling from ear to ear because I just love you. And this is going to be so much fun. And it's interesting, right? Like, if I were to ask the audience right now, like, what do you think sees clearer? Like, my eyes or an iPhone camera? And the reality is it's probably the iPhone camera because it's not distorted. It hasn't been maybe beaten down by life, or it doesn't have limitations, so to speak. And I like that you said lens, and I know that's your thing. And one of the things I was really excited to ask you about today, because I share the same interest, is your obsession with the Matrix. I know that was huge for you. You could probably argue that it's more of a documentary than a science fiction film, or whatever the case would be. Why does that movie really grab you?
It's the perfect metaphor for the human condition. So we all live inside of what I call a frame of reference. They call the matrix, but it's the same idea. It is an illusion that's pulled over your eyes that you think you're seeing objective reality, but in truth, you are seeing a complete fabrication. And once you understand that everything you think of as the real world is really just your virtual reality creation inside of your own mind, then you can start to do something. And we can go as deep on that as you want, but as a metaphor, that's why the movie is really interesting, is that really is what's going on. All right, so if you want to go deeper, there's a guy named Donald Hoffman who really sums up why I think this is meaningful. And he says that no product of evolution would ever get to the point where it saw objective reality, because objective reality is so complicated that anything that was truly contending with the math of real life would never be able to function. So everything is an abstraction on an abstraction on an abstraction to simplify. And the analogy that he uses is very apt. It's exactly why the Matrix is so powerful, and that is of a video game. And he said, imagine that you're living life is playing Grand Theft Auto. And what you see is a steering wheel, you see a car, you see other people, and you go in, you open the door in the car, you pull the person out, you jump in the car, you drive around. And he said, what's really happening, what is objectively real, is that there are electrical circuits opening and closing really fast in a specific sequence. And that's all that's really going on. But you would not be able to play the game by opening and closing the electrical circuits really fast in a certain way. Instead, you need a graphical user interface up on the screen made of pixels. You need a controller in your hand to be the proxy for the steering wheel. You need the visual representation of the steering wheel on or seeing which way the car moves when you move the steering wheel. And all of it is, they're all fake. They're all layers of abstraction. The only thing that's real are the electrical currents. And that's real life. And another way to think about it that isn't analogy, this is actually really real. What you and I are experiencing right now is the number of photons that reflect off of a given surface. And then what can be captured by a camera broken up into digital zeros and ones and sent across a stream, right? So that's what's real. But what we perceive is I'm looking at a computer, but I actually see you. And that is my perception, is that I have some sort of magic window that's allowing me to see you. But in reality, none of that's true. So, okay, if you know that your brain is creating this wild simplification and is giving you proxies, it's giving you a graphical user interface, but it isn't quote unquote real, then you know my brain is involved in giving me its interpretation of the world. And if it's giving me an interpretation, an abstraction, rather than the real thing, how much distortion is added into that? And is that distortion helping me or hurting me? To get to that point, you have to define what are we moving towards? What's our North Star? So anyway, that's why the Matrix is so powerful. You really are living in a virtual reality. Think about this. Your brain is encased in total darkness. Light never reaches your brain. Sound never reaches your brain. Electrical, chemical signals reach your brain and are interpreted, but it's not like the light actually goes inside your brain and is just playing a movie screen somewhere inside of your mind. It's all an interpretation of electrical and chemical inputs. And so what I began to realize was, oh, okay, cool. So evolution has created this device that's designed to predict the future. And that could be the immediate future. Cup is falling. What's your trajectory? How would I move to catch it? Or it could be the distant future. What is a life shared with my wife going to look like, and what will it take to get there? But it's a prediction machine. Now, once I understand that there are all of these cognitive distortions going on, all of these approximations, all of these biases that I have, some of them lead me to what I think should be my North Star, which is fulfillment, and others do not. And by the way, I know enough to steer towards a neurochemical state, because that's all you have. You are a chemical processing plant. And so grounding yourself in biology, mistrusting that biology to a certain degree, understanding that your brain works in a certain way, and it may not have what you consider to be your best interest at heart. So if the thing I'm steering towards is fulfillment, and my brain is steering towards staying alive long enough to have kids that have kids, I'm at odds with my biology at times. And so I have to be very thoughtful about how I get to that neurochemical state that I want, because I have to acknowledge my biology to get there. So anyway, I could literally diatribe for the next hour about that. I'll pause there. But that's why that movie became so important to me, and is the very thing I think people fail to understand about their lives, which is why they're unhappy.
This is awesome. Bang. That's where we dropped the mic, but we're just getting warmed up. And I love all of this. And it's true. Like, perception is reality, as they say. So based upon your lens, what's distorted can either be hurting you, or I imagine like the geniuses. And I used to read up on this years back when I was really big into NLP and stuff. And I remember they said like Walt Disney, they were naming some other people, and they're like, the geniuses, what makes someone a genius is the way, not necessarily like their IQ or anything like that, but it's the way they see how enriched their map of the world is, because maybe they have less distortion, or maybe they see more possibilities where others see limitations. I wanted to ask you, when did you really put this stuff together to maybe remove some limiting beliefs and really create your own reality?
It's been going for a very long time. So I got introduced to the Tao Te Ching, which was, even that's not true. So first I got introduced to Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, which really influenced me a lot. Yoda, if you take Yoda's advice, your life will actually be better. And so that put me on a path without me knowing I was on a path. Then my friend introduced me to the Tao Te Ching when I was 15 or 16. And that was like, oh my God, this sounds just like Yoda. And so something clicked into place for me. And that really was the beginning of my real journey of self-improvement, though I wouldn't have called it that at that time. And then when I got into entrepreneurship, it's so do or die that there's no more room for lying to yourself. And just because if you do, you end up losing. And the losing is so stark and so obvious that you start to go, whoa, what I actually don't understand what to do to win. And so I need to figure this out. And so it forces you to be honest with yourself. Building a physique will do the same thing. So for people that don't want to start a business, but you want to learn that same visceral lesson, you can say what you want about a calorie is just a calorie, but all of a sudden when you try to build a physique while eating Twinkies, you're going to be like, why isn't this working? Right. So, and then you start to have to experiment, and then you find answers and you're like, oh, okay, it doesn't matter what people tell me. I have firsthand knowledge now. So anyway, entrepreneurship put me on that journey. So in my early 20s, I really have a line in the sand moment where I realize that I am arguing for an idea in the business that I know is the wrong idea. And so I become very confused, and I keep arguing for it and arguing for it and arguing for it, and I finally win. And I have this existential crisis of, I just argued for something I know is wrong, and I'm telling everybody my goal is to get rich. So why would I argue for an idea that I know will make me less rich? And for the first time in my life, and this is why I say my superpower is I understand myself even when I'm petty, jealous, insecure, or whatever. In that moment, I realized, oh, you want other people to think you're smart. So you care about getting rich, but not as much as you care about other people thinking you're smart. And that's a self-esteem problem. And so then began understanding that, working my way through that and figuring out that I needed to build self-esteem, but I could build it around something that was moving me towards my goals. And so the thing that I found, which meets Nassim Taleb's definition of anti-fragile, was to be the learner. So instead of trying to get people to think I was smart, instead of valuing myself for other people thinking I'm smart or for me thinking I'm smart, I started to value myself for identifying the right answer. And then that changed my entire life. And so that got me addicted to wanting to understand, no judgment. Hey, you're probably being insecure or petty, but you're acting this way. Is it moving you towards fulfillment? If it's not, you need to start figuring out why you're doing it then, because there's something guiding that behavior.
Wow. First of all, I want to acknowledge you. Like, some of this stuff can be complicated to like maybe the average person who's not really informed, but you make it so digestible. And you're talking about like pretty out there concepts, but you break it down and it just sounds like how could you possibly think anything else? But it's so special, and it's just one of the reasons why I gravitated towards you a few years back is because I love how fascinated you were with like unlocking other people's potential. Like, you would ask the questions that I'd never seen asked before, and it helped me really understand them and learn them. And so you mentioned the word fulfillment a couple times. Maybe it's the answer, maybe not. But you could do anything. You've earned that, and so forth. Why impact theory?
Because of fulfillment. So there's a recipe for fulfillment, which is very simple. You have to work really hard to gain a set of skills that allow you to serve yourself and other people. If you do that in a way that you both find meaningful, if you do that, then you will feel good about your life. And if you don't do that, no matter how much money you make, you won't feel good about your life. So that's just nature. And I learned that lesson in my 20s when, on paper anyway, I was worth a couple $1 million and I was just profoundly unhappy. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. I've now lived the cliche that money can't buy happiness. So I'm never going to make that mistake again. Look, money's super powerful. And so people always get confused that if somebody says that money doesn't make you happy, that I'm saying money isn't amazing. Money's amazing. It's incredibly powerful, but it is not going to touch how you feel about yourself. And so, since I believe the only thing that matters ultimately is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself, Now I'm like, okay, well, money can't be my primary pursuit. So I would say money falls into my top 5 most important things in my life, but it's like in 5th place. It's not in 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. So getting people to understand that, I think, would already be really useful. But for me, in that moment, understanding money's not going to buy me happiness. So then when I sold Quest and I was worth, a lot of money,
How much,
I
Tom?
wasn't, it's what, 9 figures. So I'll leave it at that.
Nice.
Uh, and yeah, it's a lot. So I left Quest on a Monday and started Impact Theory on Tuesday. And the
I think
reason
Lisa
is,
was telling me the story. Correct me if I'm wrong, so I didn't interject. You guys were like working out or something when it was official, and then just went back to work.
so there's two, we got the money in 2 different tranches. So we got, like, say, a third of it on the day she was talking about, and then 2/3 of it on the second part.
Got it.
So yeah, on the day that she was talking about, this was where we went from not just having a normal amount of money to wealthy. And it because we were selling equity in the company, you go from just your paycheck to, holy hell, I'm now rich. And with literally the refresh of your banking app. And so, yeah, we were in the gym hitting refresh on the banking app because we knew, like, you do this big call and there's like 19 lawyers on the call. They're like, initiate the transaction. Yes. Each lawyer. Yes. Initiate. So, like, okay, the money has now been wired. You're like, all right, word. And they're like, you'll see it in your account in 10 minutes or whatever. And so Lisa and I are just sitting there with the app, like, refresh. And then one refresh is like, holy hell, it's really there. And in that moment, she was like freaking out and she's like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm going to work. And she was really caught off guard by that. And the thing I try to explain to people, that was the championship ring. Winning the championship ring was kind of irrelevant. Becoming the person that was capable of a championship performance, that's what made me feel good about myself. So by the time we made the money, I had to become the kind of person that works no matter what. Healthy, sick, sad, joyful, doesn't matter. I'm showing up and I'm playing to win. That's who I am. That's who I want to be. So I'm going to do this. It's not an extrinsic force pressing on me. It's an intrinsic force pressing out. And so to be the person I wanted to be, of all days, I'm going to go to work on the day that I just got all the money, so that people know I'm not kidding. When I say I don't do this for the money, I'm not doing this for the money. If I was doing this for the money, I wouldn't have shown up today. And if I was doing it for the money, I really wouldn't have started Impact Theory without taking a single day off between Quest and Impact Theory. So meaning and purpose is what drives me. Being a hardcore motherfucker is what drives me. Like, I want to be the toughest of the tough. I want to be unbreakable. I have been through things in business. Look, I'm not Goggins. I can't, I won't say I can't. I don't test myself on the physical field the way that he does, but dude, I will eat people for lunch when it comes to dealing with stress, pressure, having, at Quest, 3,000 people's livelihood riding on my shoulders, millions of dollars at stake. It's like, yeah, I can do what other people can't. The things I have been through would break basically everybody. And I just keep going. And so being that person matters to me a lot. Having money is useful, but it doesn't matter to my identity.
Yeah, this is great stuff. And for the audience, like, grab a journal, run that back. So powerful. And I love that you talk about, like, yes, being physically fit is important, but being mentally fit, that's a whole nother level. And you take pride in that, right? And that's a skill that you can develop, but by building resilience and putting yourself maybe in uncomfortable situations and so forth. And a couple times, like, meaning and purpose. And I can relate, and not to the scale of you just yet, but I know what it feels like. And one of the reasons why I think my CLS has worked in what people would consider relatively short fashion is because I'm so aligned and I love this stuff. I generally want to help people, and people are always like, what are you on? And I'm like, I don't think you get it. Like, I spent 35 years trying to find myself. Like, my soul is lit. Like, I love having this conversation. My ROI is somebody's going to listen to this because you and I showed up like this, and maybe they'll breathe a little bit different oxygen because you hit them with a nugget, and now they see things a little bit differently. And when you live and when you understand that, it's just a whole different way of life. Would you agree?
Very much so. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you and I do it for the same reason. It's incredible when, now look, I'll be very honest. So I think adults, about 2% of them will hear a revolutionary idea and do something with it. Your audience, my audience, they're 100% of the 2%, if you see what I mean. But
Yes.
98% of people will do nothing with the information. I've learned that firsthand, which is why impact theory. So impact theory has two sides: idea and entertainment, ideas and entertainment. The ideas side is what I'm known for now, but the entertainment side is what I want to be known for, because that lets me hit people in that 11 to 15 year range, which is known as the age of imprinting. And so it's where people really drink of the culture and decide who they want to be. But if you can hit people with the right idea at the right time, it really does completely change their life. I mean, it certainly did mine.
Yeah, hell yeah. And also, just go backwards for a second. Something you said before was so special. I often tell my community and so forth, like it's not so much about the goal as it is who you become on the journey to chasing your goal. You phrased it a little bit sexier, the championship ring, right? And it's so true. And I think that's a big misconception for people. And we hope this lands with somebody today. Like it's not the end result, it's who you become in the process, who you show up as, the better quality human being that you become on the journey. And if you can find love and joy in the process, it's just a whole different frequency. Like you don't have to feel joy once you get the thing. Ironically, you practice feeling joy now, and then typically you get the thing because you're just, a vibrational match for it, right?
Yeah, and you may not ever get the thing, and I want people to understand that.
True.
So the struggle is guaranteed, the success is not.
Oof.
And knowing that that is true, you still better be able to have an extraordinary life. And one thing that you have to do if you want to have an extraordinary life, despite maybe never getting the outcome that you want, is you have to learn to struggle well. Now, getting people to understand this, struggling well just means that you're running that recipe for fulfillment that I talked about earlier. You're working really hard to gain a set of skills that allow you to serve yourself and other people in something that matters to the whole. And ultimately, as you become that person, you're going to start to feel good about yourself. And that's the thing that nobody can take away. And that happens long before you get the outcome that you want. And because the following statement is true, you want to make sure that you optimize for the struggle no matter what. Humans are driven by hunger, and literal hunger, as in I need to eat more food. And then there is metaphorical hunger, as in I'm hungry for success. But here's the great irony of success, that no matter how high of a mountain you climb, the only question you will ever ask at every peak is, which mountain am I going to climb next? Because nature has to optimize for that. Because imagine if you ate one meal and that meal was so satisfying that you never needed to eat again, you would ultimately starve to death. Like that would have served you for a day, maybe a week. Maybe the meal was so crazy and you put on so much fat, it kept you going for 2 weeks. But at some point, a month, 6 months, you're dead. And so nature works this mechanism, and nature is very frugal. So it's going to use things over and over and over. That same momentary satiety mechanism is going to be used in other things. So you will accomplish something huge in your life, right? So I'm recording this in a ridiculously comically large mansion. And it is yeah, my cohort over here is nodding. It is amusingly large, and it's just a house to me now. So it's like, if you've ever heard of hedonic adaptation, it's like you will adapt to that. And that doesn't mean that it isn't a cool thing to do and a fun thing to have. And if you enjoy it, go for it. I want people to have whatever toys they want to have, but I want them to pursue them knowing it's not going to change how you feel about yourself. You will adapt very quickly to it. You will always be looking for the next thing. So if all of that is true, please don't get excited thinking, oh, I'm going to have the house and I'm going to be excited. I'm going to have the money and I'm going to be excited. I'm going to have the title and I'm going to be excited. Or I'm going to have the kids and I'm going to be excited. No, no, no. It's the process of raising the kids that makes you feel like a stud. It's the process of conquering that next business challenge that gave you the money that let you buy the house that's going to make you feel some kind of way about yourself. It's getting up every day and showing up and working hard, elevating your team. It's about when everything goes wrong and you're rocked to your knees and you find a way to get back up on your feet. That moment is what's going to make you feel good. It isn't going to be the money, the house, the whatever. So I get it. Again, money's powerful. I understand how my house makes people feel. It makes them feel something about me that it doesn't make me feel about myself. And if they could understand that, then they would compartmentalize the house in the right way. It's a very useful tool. It's a piece of art you can live in, all of that stuff, for sure, for sure. But how many billionaires have to commit suicide before you realize the thing that really matters, meaning the thing that makes you want to keep living your life, isn't going to be money. I just guarantee it. But it is going to be learning to struggle well. And if you learn to love climbing the mountain so that there's no despondency when you get to the top and you're like, I've been working to get to the top for 15 years. I finally got here. And my first thought is, what's next? I'm hopeless. And that happens to so many people. As you're climbing, you have to find it hilarious that you're getting frostbite on your fingertips. The tips of your fingers are bleeding. You can't even feel them anymore. They're so numb from the pain. And to be laughing at the fact that when I push up and I'm at the top, I'm just going to be like, and now what? That's funny. And if you can capture that energy, there's a concept in sailing called velocity made good. And it's where there is wind happening. But if your sail is misaligned, you'll go nowhere. In fact, if your sail is misaligned, it can tip you over. But if you align your sail correctly, then it's going to blow you in the right direction. And you're going to be able to capture that energy and get the velocity out of it. If you understand what humans are like, how your brain is, how you're hardwired, you can capture that velocity. And instead of being crestfallen when you get to the top of the mountain that, oh my God, I just want to keep climbing, that you're like, yes, that's the point. And so I'm not going to invest in the having or the being. I'm going to invest in the pursuit and the becoming. And if people do that, knowing full well, they'll be A-okay.
This is an 8 or 9 figure conversation if somebody applies it, and it's so good, straight up. And I agree with everything. And I think it's so important for people that have ambitious goals and so forth, that are very driven. And I get all that because that used to be me. So I have contrast. But if you can fall, and it reminds me of when I run these marathons, right? Like mile 19, like now when I can't feel anything, or the evil demonic voice comes in my head, I'm like, I remember you. And I just laugh, because what else can you do, right? Because once you get into the finish line, it's not literally the finish line, it's what got you there, the training, the hard miles, and all that stuff. And I think this is such an important life lesson for anybody in really any endeavor arena.
Agreed.
Yeah. You mentioned Yoda before. I got to ask you, what was his dialogue in The Empire Strikes Back that really grabbed you and stuck out?
Well, so the actual dialogue, my favorite, is do or do not, there is no try. But the whole idea that what Luke is battling with is his own mind, that is the key takeaway. That's what makes that whole trilogy, quite frankly, so special. Is it was really the first time, certainly I had seen a warrior where what the warrior had to do was overcome their mind, right? So Luke is like, he's always saying what he can't do. And so Yoda calls him out on it. And he's like, with you, always what you can't do it is. And he was like, Luke is having a hard time lifting the rock. And then he tries to lift the X-Wing fighter out of the swamp.
Yep.
And Luke is like, it's just too big. And so then Yoda lifts it, and he's obviously a third of Luke's size. And he, says, judge me by my size, do you? And it's just like all that stuff of like, it isn't about your body. Look, the body is incredibly important. And I would be remiss not to point out that even though that's not my area that's where I find out where my breaking point is, I focus very much on taking care of my body. But the idea that you can have these outsized outcomes, I think is really, it's really important. It's really powerful.
I love that. And I'm getting Matrix vibes, and I love that trilogy as well. And I wanted to ask you real quick, it seems like you're the type of cat, as am I, like you're always looking for a message in everything. Are you a Batman fan, specifically those Dark Knight films?
I am, yeah. I am a huge Batman fan.
Same, brother.
And Nolan's are
the
incredible.
Dark Knight Rises, when he makes the jump without the rope, my goodness. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. I can cry. Like the only time these days, like I can cry, honestly, is when I watch a movie like that and it just really gets you, and it's so special. I feel like you're the same.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. I was doing my homework on you because a couple of reasons. Number one, I want to show this conversation the respect it deserves, but honestly, it's such a treat. I know you, someone that you look for maybe inspiration when you were building impact theory was Disney. Is that accurate?
Oh, for sure.
How come?
So I think it's really important if you're trying to do something big that you have somebody to model yourself after. So if you're trying to change your physique, find somebody that's built the physique that you want. If you're trying to build the next Disney, then it's very simple to know where to start. And so, we're recording this in 23. Disney was founded in 1923. So they have a 94-year head start on me. They have billions of dollars in IP, billions of dollars in revenue. And I thought, okay, what do you do to get there? And so you can't transpose it directly, but it's actually really edifying to see what they did, how they started, what drove them, what obstacles they had to overcome, what was that, through line that they really kept coming back to in difficult times. And for Disney, it was just always the content. And he really had an eye for great stories told simply. And yeah, I've learned a lot from reading his biography and how he literally went from, can't remember if it's a garage or a barn, but effectively starting in a shack and it becoming the most dominant media empire the world has ever seen. And the start of all that is the thing that I find most usable for us at Impact Theory, which is in the early days, it's not so true now. It's not true at all now. But in the early days, they only told one kind of story and they told it from 1,000 different angles. And because of doing that, they made a name brand for themselves. And when I was growing up, the following statement would land so heavy. So if I tell you I'm going to go see a Sony movie or a Warner Brothers movie or a Paramount movie, you don't know anything about it. But if I tell you I'm going to go see a Disney movie, you know something about it. And
Sure.
so Disney's brand identity was so clear from 1923 until about 2010. And it was just, laser focused. And now, look, I don't fault them for what they're doing now. They can afford to do it. But that laser focus of making the brand mean something, of earning people's trust, like that's what we're about. So we only tell one kind of story. We tell it from 1,000 different angles in both fiction and nonfiction. But it's ultimately, I went from not capable to way more capable. And that's our jam. And just showing people over and over and over that the human animal is designed to get better.
I love it. And I couldn't be more aligned with you, and I love it. And isn't it the best? Like when you see somebody or you help somebody think that they can't, or they have these limiting beliefs, and you just help them see things from a little bit of a different perspective, and then they get over the hump, so to speak. It's just the most beautiful thing. And this is an abundant universe. Like there's more than enough for anyone to go around. So like, for example, where other people maybe look at a certain space and think, oh, it's saturated, even personal development now, I see like, wow, look what's possible. So many people are having success. If they could do it, I could do it. And I say that humbly. It's only a matter of time before I'm resourceful, or if I put in the work and I learn. And you, that's basically your life's mission right now.
That is very true. And watching people transform is truly one of the great things I think any of us can experience. And, I see these ideas as timeless ideas. And I try to be as good as I can at making them accessible to a modern audience. But it feels almost like an honor to this is cheesy language, but to be a vessel for these incredible ideas that have been bouncing around, in terms of the Tao Te Ching, it's what, 2,500 years old. So it's like, these are not new ideas. But to be able to experience them, learn how to harness them, and then help other people do the same it's pretty amazing, man.
You
It's
know,
it's a pretty cool time.
I was just thinking, like, there's a lot of people in this space, obviously, like Tony Robbins, of course, and other people, and mutual friend Ed Milet. There's a lot of people doing great things, but like what you're doing is so unique. It's so like it's just different, and I can't get enough of it because it's movies like that, like The Matrix, and even like some of the stuff that Yoda thinks. It's like when you just hear something a different way and you're willing to buy in, literally your lens and the entire world that you're looking at changes in an instant. It's crazy.
Yeah, frame of reference, man. Frame of reference is really everything, and getting people to understand that you have created a frame of reference for yourself, and all of the change that you want in your life is possible, but you're going to have to change your frame of reference first. And so challenging your beliefs, challenging your values, understanding that if you don't change your values, beliefs, rules, routines, you are never going to get the change in your behavior that you're going to need in order to get a different outcome. But if you can get people to take extreme ownership in their life, recognize my life is an exact reflection of my choices. If I want a different outcome, I need only make different choices, and then figure out, okay, what belief, value system, rule, routine is driving my current suboptimal choices? How do I tweak that so that then everything else just falls in line behind it?
Yeah, so good. And it comes back to how we started the conversation with the word awareness, right? Because you can't change it if you can't see it. And you don't have to
Very
like
true.
it, but as long as you acknowledge that some sort of pattern that you're operating from or software like a computer, it's not benefiting you. And as long as you know that, you can kind of uninstall and reinstall a different program, so to speak.
Yep, exactly true.
Yeah. I have like a dopamine hit right now talking to you. It's so special. And I was looking at your content this week, as I would highly suggest all the listeners to do. Everything Tom puts out is awesome. And you were talking about confidence, or at least I got from it that confidence is a skill. And I was surprised that you were talking about in regards to back in the day when you were single, maybe in your 20s, because every time you get a girl, you were kind of projecting this energy that you didn't want to lose her. And you said something along the lines of be aggressively yourself and not have that fear of loss. And when I think of that, I think of like energy and resistance and stuff like that. I think this is really powerful. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Yeah, so I was really bad with women, profoundly bad with women. And I went to this guy that I knew who was very successful with women, and I said, "What's the secret?" And he was like, "Tom, you just have to treat them like an asshole." And I was like, "Ugh, there's no way that's true. There's no way." I'm like, "This is so cliche. This is the worst advice I've ever seen in my life. I have no interest in doing that." And I was like, and he's not like that. So what is he actually trying to say? Because what I saw in him, because I saw him around women, and what I saw was a guy that was effortless and charming. And as I tried to figure out, okay, what does he mean by that? And maybe I'm being too generous, but what I ended up taking away, and it works like a charm, is that I needed to be willing to walk away, and that there's nothing attractive about somebody who's trying too hard to get you. It's a super weird quirk of the human condition, but it just is. Like, I wouldn't want a girl that was going too hard after me. A girl doesn't want me going too hard after her. And so it's this dance. And it's a flirty dance. It's a bit of a tease. It's a bit of a pull away. It's like, I could take it or leave it. I'm confident in who I am. And so honestly, man, it was like flipping a light switch. I went from couldn't get a girl to I could get any girl that was within my sexual market value. So I'm not saying that I could pull out of my league, but in my league, all of a sudden I understood, oh, okay, cool. This is exactly how you play the game. And if you don't play the game, you're never going to have a fruitful relationship. Now, what's really weird is how do you go from playing a game and knowingly doing things in a way designed to optimally attract somebody, but doing it in a way that's set up where a long-term relationship will be the successful outcome of that. And so, and it has to be built on trust and all that. So it ends up coming down to, okay, you have to exude confidence that's earned. So you need to actually become somebody worthy. And the way I explain it, and I don't know your audience well enough to know how they're going to react to this, but it's true. So I'm going to say it. You can cut it out if you want.
Never.
You have to be worthy as a guy, especially, you have to be worthy of somebody allowing you inside their body. Like it's a pretty dramatic thing that a woman opens herself up to when you cross that threshold. And if you treat that as a tremendous honor, as a sacred moment, and I'm not saying that you can only have sex with the person you married, that has certainly not been the case in my life, but I didn't treat it as something that was like throwaway and didn't mean anything. And so I wanted to be worthy of that. So I started taking care of myself, working out, dressing well, realizing what am I good at, and like wearing that on my sleeve and like showing people that side of me. And I I don't know what's outside the scope of this, so I'll keep it PG. But like as you begin to master that, it will change everything. And so get good at something that matters. Be willing to walk away. Be genuinely interested in that person. Try to really learn about them, and then be aggressively yourself. And remember that you are throwing the bat symbol in the sky, going back to Batman. You're throwing the bat symbol in the sky to get the response of the people that respond to exactly what that is. And if you throw the wrong symbol into the sky, the wrong person is going to respond. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. My job is to package who I am as well as I can. And yes, you have to package it. I'm going to package it as well as I can, but it is going to be exactly who I am. And once I started doing that, then it was like, again, within my sexual market value, it became very easy to progress with women. And that ended up leading me to meeting my wife. And yeah, slam dunk on that one shot, one kill. And she's the only woman I've ever said I love you to. And yeah, it's an incredibly simple game to master. I won't say it's easy because it requires you to get control of your own emotions to become somebody worthy of that. But it's really simple.
Yeah, so many things to unpack right there, and I want to come back to Lisa for a second, but also something that stuck out was authenticity. Like what I'm a recovering a bit of a people pleaser. When I stepped into this and CLS, there was no guarantee, but I made one promise to myself. I would show up as real, raw, and authentic as I am, and I understand I might not be everyone's cup of tea, but the right people will gravitate to the bad signal, and the wrong people will not, and that's something I can live with, and that just made me think of that. So beautiful, and also you talking about like energetically, it's a vibrational universe. So like when you're not afraid to lose her, all of a sudden she's a little bit more intrigued. But also when when you have such a fear that you don't want to lose her, that builds up resistance. To me, I look at that as the same in like business deals or just life. Like when you have so much energy towards something like that, you're really creating this resistance because you're afraid not to lose it. Would you agree with that?
You and I use very different language, but yes, it is. People are going to feel your energy. And if you feel anxious, nervous, unsettled, people don't want to be around that. And part of the reason that somebody like The Rock becomes as famous as he is, this is something I noticed a long time ago. The actors that become the most famous are the ones that are best in the interviews. And that tends to mean that they're interesting, they're charming, they're at ease, and we all gravitate towards that. It feels good. And I don't know if you've ever been around somebody that's anxious. It feels horrible. It makes you anxious. And so people don't want to be around people that are anxious. They want to be around somebody that's effortless, that's relaxed. It just feels really good. And so especially in a moment where it could lead to romance, it's like you want that effortlessness, that ease, that comfort around that person, because you're constantly gauging, especially if you're a woman, can I be vulnerable around this person? Can I trust this person? Am I going to enjoy this person? And so, yeah, you need to have a quiet confidence in yourself, because vibes, man, like if people can't vibe with you, if you make them feel a way they don't want to feel, it's just no good. And so I love telling the story. In today's day and age, it makes me laugh. So my opening pickup line to my wife was, sit your ass down, you're not going anywhere. And
Confidence.
if yes, but you also have to be playful, right? Because if I deliver that, sit your ass down, you're not going anywhere, like that's not
Tonality.
fun. And it's like, F you, like I'm walking away. But if you can nail that line in a way that's cheeky and playful, it
Flirtatious.
works. And she literally sat down so fast that later she was like teasing herself. She was like, I couldn't believe that I actually did it. She's like, I'm such a strong-willed woman, self-confident, self-assured. And she was like, for me to be like, okay, and just like sit down. She was like, I couldn't believe it. So, but at the same time, she was like, I loved it. I loved that you could, I mean, again, not knowing your audience, I'm taking some huge risks on your behalf.
Please.
But put out masculine energy. You know what I mean? That I wasn't doing it in a domineering way. I don't think, well, I guess, especially with my face, people think that I'm like that. I'm not, but I was certainly self-assured, very direct, but a little bit playful.
Yeah.
And if you can find that gear, again, not easy, but simple, If you can find that gear, the world will open up to you.
I love all this, and there's so much alignment here. And I love how you study like psychology and stuff. Like depending upon the tonality when you said that, right? Could have been like, "Who the hell is this crazy guy?" But you say it where it's like I'm joking, but am I? Right? And it just works. And I agree with you in regards to the actors. Like I grew up being a huge wrestling fan, like WWE wrestlers and so forth. I just always got a kick out of that stuff, the larger than life figures. And one thing that stood out to me with the ones that I gravitated towards was the charisma, the personality, so to speak, the frequency.
Mm.
So what from the interviews, and I agree with you in regards to movie stars as well, even the athletes.
No doubt. No doubt. An athlete has a leg up because if they can outperform, they'll still get popular. But no doubt. No doubt.
Yeah. In regards to Lisa, you guys are clearly doing something right. No relationship is simple, or I should say, so easy. I'm newly engaged. I'm really excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you, brother. When I reinvented myself, it was not just my career, it was my life and the person I'm becoming. I'm very blessed to have gravitated towards my fiance, Alessia. What is your guys, I don't want to say secret, but what's been a really big key for you guys to maintain such a strong relationship throughout?
There is very much a reason that everybody says it's about communication, because it really is. So you are not going to have a long-lasting, thriving relationship unless you can communicate well. But it also goes back to that awareness that we're talking about. So for instance, recently Lisa was really trying to communicate something to me for a long time, and she would really get frustrated with me. And she was getting frustrated with me over something that I was really proud of. So the longer I'm in business, the more I'm in business, the more I can just go into all emotion is flipped off. I'm like a robot. I know what to do. I just execute. And so when she and I collide, I can just turn off my emotion and just like, hey, let's look at the raw facts of the situation. Let's go through this. And she would really get upset about it. And so the words she would use, I couldn't understand what she was talking about. And so we were colliding over the same issue. And whenever you collide over the same issue over and over, you either have different base assumptions or different values. And so I'm like, okay, we either have different values or different base assumptions. To be honest, at the time, I thought it was different values. And I was like, whoa, something has changed. And so we were talking about it. And I was like, hey, because 2022 was the hardest year of my business life. And so coming out the other side of that, I was like, I'm really proud of what the skills that I developed in order to get through all of that and get to the other side of it. And you seem to be pushing back on that. And so maybe I've developed a value that now we're at odds and you have a totally different value. It ended up not being that, but what it ended up being was we had different base assumptions. So my base assumption was removing all emotion is the right answer. Her base assumption is when you're colliding, she didn't have these words. This is me finally being able to put words on what she was talking about, and this explains why communication is so important. But what she was trying to say was when you shut off your emotions, you stop broadcasting and receiving love. And so your face hardens, your tone of voice hardens. It feels like I'm talking to a robot. And so she felt like my husband disappears and my business partner is now in his place. And the thing that serves you in business is not serving you in the marriage. And so finally, through us being able to like keep talking about it, but that's hard because okay, we collide over this. So you have to be able to step back and go, we have to process through this. We have to be able to talk about this thing that's driving us both crazy. And I can say, hey, I'm actually really proud of this. You're really frustrated by it. I'm not judging her for being frustrated. She's not judging me for being proud. And so now it's like, okay, is this values or is this base assumption? And when you can talk like that, it's what we call getting beneath the tea to like the real issue. And the reason we call it that is the biggest argument we ever had was over a cup of tea. And we argued for hours about this cup of tea. And finally, I was like, this is so ridiculous. I'm like, there's no way I'm this angry about a cup of tea. So what am I actually angry about? And so we vowed that we would never argue about the tea again. So in our arguments, if we can feel this is about the tea, like what's the real thing? So, but you have to be able to like, even explaining this to you, there's like 9 high-level communication strategies that we're using in all of this, from getting beneath the tea, recognizing the difference between values and base assumptions, being able to articulate your base assumptions. Is there an insecurity in here? Usually when somebody's getting angry, there's an insecurity that's being triggered. Being able to own, and articulate that you have an insecurity, and then your significant other not using that insecurity against you, which is very tempting, and not in that argument or in the 1,000 arguments that you will have for the rest of your life. You can never, before you and I started rolling, Rick and I were talking about, you can never weaponize your significant other's insecurities against them, because through the course of a long relationship, they're going to tell you everything that you could break them with. And you'll be in an argument, you'll know, if I say this one line, I'll win the argument, but I will break them. I'm the one person that loves them in spite of that thing. And if I now go, yeah, but you know this bad thing about yourself, they'll snap. And it's like, you've got to be willing to take a 2-day, 2-week, 2-month journey of, especially if you're a guy, pain and suffering of dealing with all these emotions. Oh God, to get to the final resolution instead of the thing that would end the argument in 2 seconds, which is to say that sentence. Most people can't do it. Most people are like, I'm just going to break them. Yeah. And then they wonder why, like, why doesn't my marriage thrive? Because your significant other cannot trust you with their innermost secrets. Why would you be in a relationship with somebody if you can't tell them, I'm insecure about this thing? That sucks. The only thing worse than an insecurity is not having at least one person that you can be completely honest about, and they're still into you. A whole thing on insecurities that we could go into. You can't just lay it on them and be like, hey, there it is, I'm doing nothing about it, deal with it. But you should be able to at least express it as you work through it. So anyway, so much goes into all of that. So when people say communication, it really is true. But to actually give people useful tools, you have to walk through all of the things I just said and more.
So good, brother. And it's funny because you have such a gift at telling, like, breaking things down, and like kind of like when you were describing your story, I couldn't help but think of me and my fiance. It's like, when you're arguing about something, is it really the something, or is it insecurity about something else? And you're using that as the excuse. And
yep,
that was pretty powerful.
No, man. And that, look, timeless ideas. So it is available to anybody, but it is very hard. Most people judge themselves, so they don't want to admit they have the insecurity. And then if they do have the insecurity, the last thing they want to do is say something about it. And then if you have to admit the insecurity, so part of why you get angry is that anger is a far more useful emotion than sadness or insecurity. And so meaning it puts you on the offensive. And usually in nature, it's way better to be on the offense than it is to be backpedaling and in a weak position. So righteous indignation feels good. Anger feels good. Rage feels good. Insecurity sucks. And so people are like, man, I'm in this argument. I can win this argument if I stay on the offensive. I don't like the way it would make me feel to admit to my insecurity. And maybe I'm right about this part of the argument, so maybe I'll just keep pushing it. Or even if I'm not right, I know I'm not right, I can sense a weakness in their own stance. And so I can still win the argument. And so people will do that, but you won't have the long-term relationship you want. And so in that moment, you have to let go of the anger, which feels good, it feels protective, embrace the insecurity, articulate the insecurity, and then your partner, because it takes two to tango, your partner has to take that insecurity with love, be grateful that you've shifted out of aggression and gone, you know what, Ashley, I'm insecure about this thing, and the aggression is my defense mechanism. Thank you for showing me grace. This is a thing that Lisa and I say to each other all the time. Thank you for giving me the grace. I apologize. And then it's like, then the other person gets to be the kind and generous spirit, which feels awesome. And if they live up to that moment and they're like, I totally get it. Thank you for saying that. That really means a lot. You just de-escalated this whole thing. We can feel reconnected. It all matters, but you both have to play that moment right. If you just stay on the offensive or you shift out into insecurity, you offer that up, and then the person like beats you with it because they're like, you just wasted an hour of our time. Like, you know, here you are again with the stupid insecurity. It's like, then you're not going to be vulnerable the next time.
Yeah.
It's a really complex dance, man. And look, honestly, 80% is selection. 80% of this is that Lisa's awesome. And, you know, then the 20% becomes tactics. But there's so much you can do if you have the right tactics.
Yeah. Such a beautiful answer. And just, again, you make it so digestible, and also having the courage to be vulnerable. but having the right partner to not use it against you.
And look, if you really want to have the courage to be vulnerable, become hardcore. I can be vulnerable because, dude, I have proven to myself over and over and over that I am psychotically resilient. And so it's like, okay, I've been through so much shit. So I don't have deep-seated insecurities about myself. I have insecurities, but they're not that like gnawing at my soul type insecurity. I've just done too much to be there anymore. And so I think that's really an important thing that people should not miss out on.
100%. Bang. That's where we drop the mic. You have so many cool and exciting things going on right now. The audience is breaking out, as I say very humbly. What's the best way for them to all support you? And what are you most excited about right now, Tom?
At Tom Bilyeu, on all socials, and the Impact Theory podcast. Like that is the jam. Go subscribe, go listen to those bad boys. That would be, yeah, the coolest way to get engaged.
This was really special. How can I personally support you, brother?
Man, this was awesome. I'm grateful for you having me on. Thank you for taking the time. It was a lot of fun. And beyond that, man, just continue bringing amazing stuff to people out there that need these ideas. We cannot have too many people spreading the good word. So just keep doing that, and I'm a happy camper.
Thank you so much, brother. Hang up for 1 second. I just want to connect with you after. Tom, I want you to know you're the definition of perspective, authenticity, and wisdom. From taking your life experience and spreading positivity, light, and deep truths. You're a true visionary, role model, and beacon of hope for anybody coming up today with big goals and aspirations. I could personally guarantee your best yet to come. Keep on spreading your wings and leaving your mark on this world. So much love and respect for you. Thank you so much for stopping by and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets today.
Thanks for having me on.
That was so much fun, brother. Thank you.
That was awesome, man. Thank you. I had a great time.
Yeah, I tried to make it a little bit different, as I always do. And like I said, I've been a fan for a while. I was excited about this. I know the audience will be too. I'd love to stay connected.
Yeah, for sure, man. Are you active on social at all?
Yeah, I'll shoot you a message on Instagram in 5 minutes. I'm active.
Twitter. I'm hyper active on Twitter. Twitter is really me. Everything else is the team.
Okay.
So ping me on Twitter. That would be dope.
Okay. I haven't really dabbled that much with Twitter yet. Mostly Instagram, Facebook, but I'll ping you.
Perfect. Yeah. Then I'll know. It'll be easy to reach you on Twitter, as I'm the only one that you're talking to.
Okay. And you're not very active on Instagram? It's not you, it's the team.
I mean, obviously I have, yeah. So yeah. It's all my words, but it's not me posting it. I won't see a DM. You can do it. Like if you're like, hey, give this message to Tom, then by all means the team will, but I won't see it by default.
Okay, understood. You come out to New York anytime soon?
Anytime soon, no, but I do go out there usually 2 to 3 times a year. So yeah, I'll ping you when I'm next in town.
I would love to, and if we can make time for it, I'd love to grab a coffee, brother.
Awesome, man. I look forward to our paths crossing.
Thank you so much, brother. Have a great rest of the week.
Thanks. You too.
Take care,
Bye.
Tom.